Reigns face people like Triple H and Brock Lesnar based off his performance with Brock Lesnar earlier this year at WrestleMania. Of course, the main event of this year's WrestleMania. How do you feel about Roman Reigns? How did you think he fared in a match with Brock Lesnar? Brock Lesnar, to me, dominated at least 90 through 95% of that altercation, suplexing Roman Reigns multiple times before Reigns built a little bit of momentum near the conclusion of the match. Just when we think it's all said and done, over and done with, here comes Seth Rollins with a briefcase, cashes in, and saves WrestleMania 31. Never really was a big Seth Rollins fan. I would be more of a fan of him if he was a fan favorite. And I'm more of a fan of Seth Rollins than I ever was of Roman Reigns. Although I might feel that Roman Reigns deserves a push, maybe that time is not now. So you can probably hold off on that a little bit longer, especially with rumors now of the Shield reuniting when Seth Rollins returns. That's probably one of the biggest conversations ongoing at the present time throughout social media, just browsing down through some of the conversations pertaining to professional wrestling this close to WrestleMania 32. Recently, I addressed the state of WWE, and I think Seth Rollins' return is a must for WWE, just as I feel the return of John Cena, taking some time off, is a must for WWE, because we need names like John Cena and Seth Rollins in there, especially this close to WrestleMania, with the only guaranteed individual and name to be on the card for WrestleMania 32 being John Cena at this point. Given the number of injuries we've seen on the DL, we've seen Randy Orton, Seth Rollins, Daniel Bryan, Sting going down with neck, knee, back injuries, a number of injuries, and very serious injuries. If these injuries weren't as severe, we probably wouldn't be speculating on the amount of time they're going to be seeing on the DL. Really upset over that, because I think that Sting, Seth Rollins, John Cena are musts for this year's WrestleMania card, given the venue of Dallas, Texas. Under these circumstances, do you really want to put Roman Reigns in the WrestleMania main event and give us the hint that he could be going to WrestleMania again for his second WrestleMania main event after the horrible performance he gave us in this match with Brock Lesnar just earlier this year? I think what the main event probably should be, second to something like The Undertaker versus Sting, if in fact Sting returns, which I do believe one day we will see Sting back in a WWE ring facing the likes of Brock Lesnar and The Undertaker. Second to that, probably Sheamus versus John Cena is a match that I think will get a lot of conversation going. Fans would be favoring both Sheamus and John Cena just for the diversity and the very diverse crowd response that we would see in this match from reactions from fans. Of course, fans come from all over the world. Every single country is represented at WrestleMania. Even the UK and Europe are represented. So Sheamus would have his fans there. John Cena would have his American, Canadian fans, what have you. So we'd see an incredible amount of diversity from the always very diverse WrestleMania crowd. These crowd reactions, especially in the fallout of every year WrestleMania time, is just amazing. So I think that Sheamus versus John Cena, along with the diversity, would create a lot of unpredictability. Nobody would know who would come away with the victory. But I think we can pretty much bank on Sheamus being champion going into WrestleMania. He's pretty much locked in the WrestleMania main event. Not the champion I would like preferably to see at WrestleMania, probably with the over 200-plus day reign going down to Seth Rollins and ending the way it did. If their circumstances didn't unfold the way that they happened, I probably would be more of a fan of seeing Seth Rollins in the main event of WrestleMania. And even if we had to go the route of having Seth Rollins versus Roman Reigns, it probably would be better. But it seems like all indications are that we're going to be seeing a reunion of the Shield, which would be awesome around SummerSlam time. That's the maximum amount of time that we're allowing Seth Rollins will be on the DL. So I'm really looking forward to that. Really appreciate the predictions that a lot of people are posting on professional wrestling news feeds and websites like ProWrestling.com, PW Insider, Figure 4 Online, Global Wrestling. Everybody talking about the possibility of Seth Rollins returning as a fan favorite, myself included. That's a prediction I had made. In a recent column that I threw up on my website, of course, in this corner with Jonathan Clarke, I talked about the possibility of Rollins returning, if in fact he would return as a heel or a fan favorite, and if he would be against Triple H. The obvious first opponent for Seth Rollins to seek out would be whoever the champion is. Either that or going in the direction of the dream match people have been talking about for months. Seth Rollins versus Triple H, pedigree versus pedigree, Seth Rollins hitting Triple H with his own move. I don't think it would go the way of Rollins hitting the pedigree on Triple H, the innovator behind the pedigree, which he hit on Marty Gunner a couple of years ago and almost broke his face, basically driving him head first into the mat. I remember interviewing Marty Gunner on that more than a couple of years ago, over 20 years ago that happened, of course, when he took the pedigree head first. Don't think it would happen in the way of Seth Rollins hitting the pedigree on Triple H and coming away with the victory, but, you know, Seth Rollins defeating Triple H, that would be a big way of pushing Seth Rollins, there are a number of directions you could go with that. Of course, Seth Rollins versus Roman Reigns, if in fact Reigns was champion, with Roman Reigns probably being heel by then, Seth Rollins being the fan favorite in the way of a CM Punk, which is why I've gone back to saying this about Seth Rollins even more so in the wake of his injury. He really reminds me of CM Punk. I have referred to Seth Rollins as nothing more than a CM Punk knockoff or wannabe. Am I right or am I wrong in having said that, guys? Do you feel the same way I do about Seth Rollins being the emphatic replacement for CM Punk? It seems like the promos, the way he was going about being champion, allowing how long he had been champion for, over 220, 221, 22 days as champion, which is why I really appreciate the psychology of having him locked in the WrestleMania 32 main event. Obviously, the time allowed for him on the DL is not going to allow him to wrestle this year at WrestleMania 32 because he won't be cleared by his doctors, but I really would appreciate his reign coming to an end, if anywhere, at WrestleMania 32 because of John Cena, say, winning his 16th title, but obviously we're not going to go that route. So now we probably have a better direction to be headed in when you're talking about ratings and pay-per-view buy rates and subscribers to your network, because now at least we could see what people have been talking about for months, and that is a reunion of The Shield. Really big fan of The Shield, more so than I ever was, of The Shield breaking away from each other and going their separate ways. I said that Dean Ambrose reminded me of a Brian Pillman. I was trying to give these single wrestlers from The Shield the benefits of the doubt, like Dean Ambrose putting me in mind of Brian Pillman, then Roman Reigns being the breakout star of The Shield. My analogy between Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns proved out to be an inaccurate one. I apologize for that, kind of kicked myself in the face and the proverbial nuts for having said that Roman Reigns was actually going to be the breakout star. That was before we got that reaction from Philadelphia earlier this year at the Royal Rumble, the first big pay-per-view of 2015. The fans in Philadelphia really letting WWE Creative know how they felt about Roman Reigns eliminating over half the Royal Rumble, beating Kane's record, which stood for over 11 or 12 years with a record of eliminations. That was absolutely pathetic because that was an honor reserved for Kane, just as I felt about The Undertaker's win streak at WrestleMania being something he should have taken with him into the Hall of Fame. A number of things really upsetting me about the whole situation about this year's Royal Rumble, the Royal Rumble pass, which is why I think the 2016 Royal Rumble has a lot of pressure on it because it really has to make up for what the Royal Rumble earlier this year in Philadelphia gave us. But I do applaud the Philadelphia crowd for letting us know how they felt about Roman Reigns winning the Royal Rumble the way he did and that decision. The Rock may have saved it because he got a huge pop coming out and saving Reigns from a beating at the hands of the Big Show and Kane, who were left in the ring representing the Authority. And then here comes The Rock, Dwayne Johnson. And on WWE.com in the fallout of the Royal Rumble, he said he was supporting his man, his family member, of course, Roman Reigns, for the WrestleMania main event this year. The Rock had nothing to do with the WrestleMania main event. He came in with a segment for Ronda Rousey, of course, Stephanie, and Triple H, saying that Triple H should go back and dress up as Terminator, as he did in the third match of WrestleMania. Again, that really pissed me off. And they should have a match for old time's sake, The Rock versus Triple H, which leads me to believe The Rock and Triple H in a match, or either in a tag team match with Ronda Rousey and The Rock teaming up to face Stephanie and Triple H, are one of two ways you could go in the direction of saving WrestleMania, just as you could go in the direction of The Undertaker versus Sting, and possibly something like Sheamus versus John Cena. If not that, we could see probably a triple threat between Reigns, Sheamus, and Cena, which would also create a lot of diversity because we get a lot of great fan responses, I think, from that match, and a lot of conversation happening throughout social media as we see the build week after week out of WrestleMania. We're about a month and a half away from the build for WrestleMania really kicking into high gear on another level, and I'm hoping that something will point us in a more promising direction than 2015 ever did, because 2015 was just a clusterfuck year. To be honest, to a lot of fans out there. As a wrestling fan, radio host, and columnist for the last 17 years, 2015 is the worst year professional wrestling-wise in regards to professional wrestling since at least 03 or 04. I mean, 03 and 04, I criticized 03 and 04 for being the most uncreative and exuberant year that we have seen in WWE's history. For the last at least 10 years, the last decade, 03 to 04, were the most ridiculous years creatively wise WWE ever distributed. And 2015 has got to be the most clusterfuck and unorganized year that we have seen. It's been a year of Triple H and Stephanie putting themselves over like they did back in the McMahon-Helmsley era. It's been a year of them putting themselves over. A year of injuries with Daniel Bryan, Seth Rollins, Randy Orton ending up on the DL. one of the biggest injuries of the year was Sting. He has never won, speaking of Sting, at a major pay-per-view match, on a major pay-per-view for WrestleMania Night of Champions, the 2 pay-per-view appearances he made throughout 2015. Am I right or am I wrong for putting over 2015 as a clusterfuck and unorganized year? I don't think I am, and I think I can get away with having said that. Recently, in my It's All Triple H's Fault video blog series on my YouTube channel, at Jonathan Clarke 22, they're blaming Triple H or the Authority for everything gone wrong with WWE in just this past year alone, kind of putting me in mind, throwing me back to the McMahon-Helmsley era. I've been pointing the finger of blame at 2 different parties. The first party are the Authority, Triple H and Stephanie, obviously for the purpose of TV and WWE Creative, which is why I'll reiterate how I was so proud and thrilled to read a report on ProWrestling.net, which was actually popping up on my news feed, on my Facebook page, being tweeted on my Twitter every 30 minutes at Jonathan Clarke 1 for those of you wanting to follow my conversation about how Vince McMahon allegedly is believed to be the man in charge still, calling the shots backstage. Triple H and Stephanie are just the COOs and principal owners for the purpose of TV, giving Vince McMahon a long extended period of time off TV, which they believe he deserves. Obviously, he does, after over 50 years of being involved in professional wrestling and seeing every performer come and go through the doors and having to deal with so much pressure, being the chairman of the world's leading wrestling organization. So obviously, I was really proud reading that after having believed for a number of years that Triple H was actually the one in charge, calling the shots, believing that one day all of this is going to be his. And I wonder, if WWE keeps going in the direction that it is, with us not seeing really any stars being created that should be being created out of people like Bo Dallas and Adrian Neville, I wonder, if you're not creating any stars, are you kind of second-guessing yourself as Vince McMahon, leaving Triple H with so much authority and control, creative control with WWE? I think you're kind of second-guessing yourself. You're taking a step back and trying to put everything into perspective, trying to organize yourself for 2016, knowing you're this close off a new calendar year. Is this the direction we want to be headed in? I really don't know. So we need to get people like John Cena and Seth